guys, welcome back to The Bright Side. Macy here, The Bright Side Girl, and today we're going to be doing my June reading wrap up. So these are going to be all the books that I read for the majority of June. As you guys know, Mermaid Marathon is happening right now, so I'm not including any books that I'm reading for that because there will be a whole separate wrap up because I'm sure I'm going to read a crazy amount of books and I'm very excited to talk to you guys about it. I'll be vlogging that whole experience as well, so stay tuned for more videos. But this is going to be everything I read from June 1st to June 26th. So pretty much the majority of June. Now I am very proud of myself because I am still continuing to knock out series. That is my main goal whenever we're not doing a readathon. And I think I only have 8 series left to finish. And 2 or 3 of them, I have almost no books left. Other ones, I have quite a few left to finish. But I wanted to get down to at least 5 before the end of the year, including any new ones I started. So I do have a couple of new ones I started this year. But so far I am doing so good, and it feels so good to finish some of these really popular series and just get them knocked off. So this video might be a little bit more on the boring side. Sorry about that. I did read a couple things that weren't on my series list, but the majority are series. Usually I do audiobooks and physical books, but I've just decided to start doing least favorite to favorite because I think that's a little bit more fun to watch, and then I'll let you know if it's an audiobook, I'll have the narrator right here, or whether I physically read it. I had a pretty good reading month overall. I didn't have any 2-star reads, so that was exciting. I enjoyed almost all the books that I read. In the 3-star category, my least favorite read of the month was probably Stars of Fortune by Nora Roberts. This is my first Nora Roberts book. I buddy read this with a friend because the second book in the series is very like mermaid heavy. This one's kind of hard to explain. It's an adult fantasy, and we basically have this group of characters that come together from different areas of the world, and they kind of wind up meeting up, and they're trying to like collect these like stars to like save the world. It's got like a mythology theme about it. They have to like train to fight these battles, and you kind of slowly find out that each one has a different like special thing about them. I'm doing a bad job describing this. It's got a very cool premise. The only thing with this one is that it was very slow. Majority of the book, they're just like talking about what they're gonna do and uncovering the mysteries and then like eating. There's a lot of eating, which normally I love when they talk about food and things in books, but they're constantly like having something big happen. Then they'll be like, let's go grab a beer or margarita or some kind of food item, and they're like constantly like gathering and eating. And so it was weird because it kind of had contemporary vibes, but with a fantasy setting, but it is set on an island, so it does have a little bit of coastal vibes. It was okay. It was like a 3-star for me, so I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I will be reading the next one in the series. It was better than I anticipated it being, and it was less smutty than I anticipated, so that was exciting as well. I did really love the narrators. Saskia is one of my very favorite narrators, so that really helped. And overall, I'm glad I checked it out. Okay, I think the majority of these were 3.5 stars. There might have been one that was a 4-star, but they kind of all blend together. So one of the series that I finished was the Alice in Zombieland Quartet. So there are 4 books. I read the first book, I think last fall. Oh, and I did enjoy the narrator for these. I think she did a really good job. I physically read the first one and then I audiobooked the rest of them. It's very loose twist on Alice in Wonderland. It's got a contemporary setting, and there are zombies, and there's like this zombie realm that you can step into and kind of fight the zombies with like your spirit. It's got a very cool way that the zombies are done. I'm apparently a zombie person now. They're not overly gory. They're very YA. They're on the younger side of YA as far as the writing goes, but the content is closer to new adult. It's got a very strange vibe about it. They're very romance heavy, and they were actually quite a bit spicier than I expected for a young adult book, and especially an older young adult series. Felt like it was a little bit too spicy for being young adult. That's my personal opinion. Got a feisty, angsty, dramatic romance in here. I did enjoy them overall. Romance went a little bit too much like this for me over the course of the first 3 books. It was a little bit too much push and pull. I'm mad at you, now I'm not. I'm mad at you, now I'm not, which is very classic in like older YA, but I really love the zombie portion of this. It almost has like a dystopian vibe. So the only thing I will say is the last book in the series follows a different character's point of view and like a different section of the romance and just kind of takes its own turn. It almost felt like a novella, but it was a full-length book, so it was kind of just a strange add-on, and this one wasn't my favorite. I might have just kind of been over the world because I kind of binged them all. It does take a turn. I feel like you could read the first trilogy and be totally set if you don't want to like continue on. There were some things that I really liked about this one. These books are really stunning though. These are just the regular editions, so that always helps. and this would be a really good one for fall. But now we're going to move on to 4 stars, which was the majority of the reading, which was very exciting. I'm not really putting these in order of least favorite to favorite as far as 4 stars go. I reread Breakaway by Katherine Jones Payne. This is part of a mermaid trilogy. I read a couple of mermaidy, islandy themed things to kind of prepare for Mermaid Marathon. So I'm planning on reading the second book for Mermaid Marathon, but I wanted to refresh myself. This is an indie YA mermaid trilogy that I really enjoy. It's one of my favorite indie books. This one, for those of you that keep asking, is set entirely underwater. There's like a mermaid kingdom. There's a whole underwater system. So you get like a whole fantasy world revolving around the mermaids and different creatures and things. And it's really great. Our main character has a pet dolphin, which is really fun. So in this one, our main character is betrothed to this merman that is like higher up in the rankings. I don't think he's like a prince or anything, but he's kind of like a duke type of a thing. And she witnesses him doing something illegal and has to like report it, and then this whole political drama happens where the family gets very angry at her, and then her friends get mad because she kind of upsets the whole thing by revealing that he did this thing. So it's got a lot of politics in it. The actual romance in here is not my favorite. I found the actual romance kind of annoying, so hopefully that gets better in the next one. Politicalness and the underwater vibes and all that stuff are really, really good. So I gave this one 4 stars upon rereading. Okay, so then I read Nil on Fire. This is the last in the Nil series. I'm so glad to finally finish it because I had to physically read these, and I've been reading them for over a year now. It's just taken me a long time to finish them. The books are kind of all over the place. I heard that they were standalone books in the same world, but they really aren't. The first book follows completely different characters, but really sets up the world and everything that's happening. And then books 2 and 3 definitely connect and follow the same characters and tie everything together. So I highly recommend still reading them in order. The first book is Nil. This is set on an island where teens get like swept up and just show up on this island, and they're naked and they have to survive, and they learn when they get there that they have a year to get off the island and catch these like almost like wind tunnel type things to leave the island. They don't know why they're there. They don't know what's happening. This one really, really goes into depth and explains everything more. You even get the island's perspective in here, which is interesting. I can't decide how I feel. I think I still like the first one the best, but I did like getting all the background information. They definitely get a little bit brutal with their survival type things, but it is a young adult book. They're very fun. If you like an island type setting, it's got kind of a Maze Runner vibe. Highly recommend. Then I physically read Lion in the Sea by Michelle Reichman. So this is the second in the series. I only have 1 book left to finish. This is part of the Maidenship trilogy, which is so good. It's so magical. So this is an indie series as well that was really hyped a couple years ago, and I wound up really, really loving it. The first book, The Maidenship, you're following Dane Alloway, and his father dies, and he winds up having to take over the ship that his father runs and the whole crew. And then some magical things start happening like on the ship, and he uncovers things about his past. There's a really fun romance in here. In this second book, we get some mermaids, which is really, really cool. They're technically not pirates. They're just like sailors and ship captains, but it's got all the nautical vibes. It's got a lot of magic in here, like monsters and a bunch of different things. This one definitely was like intense and had some strange things happening, but I really enjoy it. They're just very, very whimsical, and I'm excited to see where the conclusion goes. I also really love the little romance in here. It's very, very fun. And I was hoping to have a copy by now, but it hasn't come in yet. I read Summer Rental from Rec Talk Ross. So this is actually an ARC that was sent to me in exchange for an honest review. As you guys know, I don't normally do that kind of thing because I'm so bad with reading ARCs, and I just like to catch up on like all my readathon and backlist books and all those things. But I know the author slightly from Instagram, and it seemed like something I might enjoy, so I checked it out. I didn't love her first book, which was A Ski Weekend. It was a winter thriller. I do have a lot of friends that really enjoyed it. It just didn't really click fully with me. It was like a 3-star. But I read this one. I buddy read it with a friend. So this is a summer thriller. It's about a group of teenage girls that rent a house in Florida for 4th of July weekend, and they're going just to like party and have fun and have a vacation. And the house is said to be haunted, and then one of their friends winds up missing, and then things just go crazy from there. This is considered a slasher thriller. It's said to be like Mean Girls meets Scream, and I feel like that's a very accurate description. We've got a little bit of I Know What You Did Last Summer type vibes in there. which is not really personally something that I love. I'm not a slasher girl. I did enjoy this, but it did surprise me how like gory and brutal it got towards the end. I was like staying up at night to finish it, and I do not recommend that if you're a baby because I was kind of scared and I kept turning my flashlight on and looking around the room to make sure there wasn't any slashers present. But if you like a good like slasher type thriller, it's definitely young adult, so it has like those younger vibes about it. I thought the twist was really good. It was very fast paced. It has kind of 90s vibes, even though it's a contemporary like current novel. So I really enjoyed it overall, and I think it's a good summer thriller. Then I read The Savage Blue by Zoraida Cordova. So this is again is a part of a mermaid trilogy. I had to physically read these because they don't have audiobooks. I read the first one last year, either during or right after Mermaid Marathon. So this is a really neat series that follows mostly a merman. We've got this teenage boy who's a lifeguard, and this rogue wave comes and like sweeps people out to sea, and he goes out to kind of like save people, and he winds up getting like attacked by this silver mermaid, and then he uncovers all of these things about his past. It's very, very wild, very young, very adventurous. It's got almost like a Percy Jackson vibe to it. First book I enjoyed. I think I gave it 3.5 stars, but this one I liked a lot more. Again, if you want a whole mermaid system where you learn about like the culture of the mermaids and underwater creatures, this is a book for you. It has everything in it. There are mermaids, there are sirens, there are Meros, they're all separate characters. There are vampires, there are different kinds of monsters and creatures. We've got a mermaid king, we've got a competition that's taking place, mostly underwater, and it's just a very, very adventurous, and it's kind of like an action film type style. It's reminding me a little bit of like Undertow, if you like that one and are familiar with it. It's just very like wild and fun, and I really enjoyed this one, so I gave it 4 stars, and I'm reading the 3rd book now. Okay. Then you guys, I finally did it. I was gonna put it off again, and I decided just to do it. So I finished the ACOTAR trilogy along with the novella. So we're gonna talk about this one first. First up, the narrator for this one was really good. I really liked her. Finally finished this crazy series. It's probably the most popular series that I own. It's taken me forever to finish it, and I don't know why. So in case you're not familiar, this is a fae series. It starts off being like a very, very loose Beauty and the Beast retelling. You've got a teenage girl that kills a wolf that winds up accidentally being a fae, and she gets swept up into the fae world and like taken there as like a prisoner for punishment for killing the fae, and just winds up being inundated into the entire world. I know a lot of you are screaming because that's such a bad description, but most of you know what this is about already. So I finally finished this 3rd book. I would say that I liked the first one and the 3rd one about the same. I definitely like the 2nd one the best, which is not an unpopular opinion. Overall, I feel like the trilogy is really fun, and it's a solid fantasy. I don't think I'm obsessed with it like everybody else is. I like really enjoyed it, but I wouldn't put it in like a top 10 favorites list or anything like that. But it's definitely worth a read if you really like fantasy, if you like fae stories, if you like steaminess. This one was a lot more spicy and steamy than the other 2 books. I felt like ACOTAR had very little, and then the 2nd one had some more, and then this one had quite a bit, which was fine. I mean, there was a lot of other plot and things happening, so I enjoyed that. I do like the romance in here. It's a good one. There's a lot of different characters and a lot of things happening and a lot of things to love as well. This is considered new adult. Definitely not a YA series in my opinion, definitely more new adult. But yeah, I'm so glad I finally read it. I squeezed in the novella as well, and this one was okay. I think I was kind of over being in the world again. We're getting closer to Mermaid Marathon. I'm just wanting to read like more mermaidy things, but this one's kind of like a love letter to the fans. Like if you really, really want to see where the characters are, it does continue on the story a little bit. But again, it's kind of got like almost a Christmas vibe about it because there's like a celebration in here, and you just kind of get a peek into their world. This one probably should have gone like in the 3.5 star category, but this is a good one. It's a decent novella, and I did enjoy it overall. I will not be counting A Court of Silver Flames as part of this series because I feel like this one is complete, and that one is like a spin-off following a different character. So I do have it and I will read it in the future, but I'm not counting it on my unfinished series list because I feel like this one's a complete set. I hope that makes sense. And I'm continuing on with the Cirque du Freak series. So I read The Vampire Prince and Hunters of the Dusk. This is books 6 and 7 in the Cirque du Freak series. This is a middle grade spooky series that is 12 books long that I'm hoping I can finish after Mermaid Marathon. Audiobooks are only like 5 hours, so it's only taking me like 2 hours to finish them. The narrator for them, Ralph Lister, is so good. These are very spooky and creepy for middle grade. Like if you have a middle grader that loves like an actual like creepy, darker book, this series is for them. I'm always surprised how dark and intense they get. So in this series, we're following Darren Shan, who winds up going to this Cirque du Freak where there's like different kinds of creatures and things performing, and he winds up having to become a vampire's assistant. And it's just his adventures through there and learning about like the vampire world, following him around and learning different things about like paranormal stuff. And each one has like its own little story in it, but continues on through the next one. So I read 6 and 7. They're 4 stars. They're always 4 stars for me. I'm really enjoying it. I only have 5 left now, so I'm very excited. Hopefully I can finish this before the fall. This would be a great one for spooky season. If you need something, if you're looking for vampire books, I really recommend, and they're very enjoyable for adults as well. And lastly, I finished God's Grave and Dark Dawn. So I reread Nevernight last month in preparation so I could finish these. It had been like 3 years since I read Nevernight, and while I loved it and remembered quite a bit, I needed more details. Okay, so God's Grave. First of all, the narrator, absolutely incredible. So good at doing all the different characters, so many fun things. So Nevernight follows Mia Corvero, and she goes to an assassin school. Basically, it's a whole story about revenge. So she's wanting to get like revenge for like her parents' deaths against like the hierarchs in her world and things like that. That's again a loose description, but we have like assassin school vibes in the first one, and I really enjoyed that part. It's almost got like a Harry Potter vibe, but these are definitely adult. Mia is a teenager, but these are definitely adult. They are very brutal. They are very dark, and again, they get very, very steamy and spicy. So in the second book, which was probably the spiciest one, we get almost more Gladiator vibes. So I don't want to tell you too much about what's happening, but the cliffhanger of Nevernight is so brutal. You're like, oh my gosh, you have to read it. So I really enjoyed this one quite a bit. I liked the whole system. You really need to pay attention to what's happening because there's so much detail. I feel like this is one I will reread in the future because I'm sure I missed a ton of stuff because of how much detail is in these books. But again, there's a lot of murder and things like that because she is an assassin. It's very brutal. It's very gory. There's a lot of foul language. There's a lot of sex scenes. So it's very adult. It's not something I would normally like, but it's got kind of like a Game of Thrones energy about it. And what I really like about these books is that the politics are so interesting, but also it's very funny and humorous. Like while it's dark, the characters are constantly making jokes and doing little things like that. I will tell you that Nevernight, and I believe all of them, have like little footnotes. I highly recommend reading them. They add so much to the story and they explain things. It can be a little jarring going back and forth. I felt like via audio, I didn't really even notice the change that much. It just kind of all flowed together. The very first couple chapters of Nevernight is very confusing. I've had so many people tell me they've DNF'd it and then they've picked it back up and decided to push through, and everything kind of blends together, makes sense, and it winds up being their favorite series ever. Not my normal read. Very dark, very intense. I want to warn you, not a light fluffy way like I normally like, but I really enjoyed it. So this one was probably a 4-star. And then we have Dark Dawn. The ending of God's Grave again was another like run to your shelf and get the next book. So I read Dark Dawn. This was a solid 5-star. It was so good. It ended so fantastic, so brutal, so unexpected. It had so many twists and turns. You fall in love with the characters, the side characters. Mia has a shadow cat that follows her around and drinks her fears, that talks to her a lot, and it's just so interesting. Again, this one has a lot of spicy scenes. I think the reason that these don't bother me for being like really steamy is that it's not the point of the book. The point of the book is the politics and the friendships and the adventures and setting things right with the government and things like that. And so I don't mind the spicy scenes thrown in there. It's not my favorite thing. So personally, I just don't like it when that's all the characters are talking about and thinking about in the books, even if there is like a side plot. But these didn't feel that way. Again, it kind of has like a Game of Thrones vibe to it. So enjoyed it. This was definitely a 5-star. I feel like I almost cried. I finished this in 2 days, even though it is gigantic. It's like almost 500 pages and I think over 22 hours on audio. Now I listen at a faster speed, so I can get through it quicker than that. But I stayed up late to finish this. I absolutely loved it. I really love this series, but definitely a dark one. Okay, you guys, so that is everything I read for June. I feel like I did really good. I finished a ton of series. I finished some things that have been on my list for so long, so I'm feeling very accomplished. I'm feeling very proud, although I'm very ready for these mermaid books and kind of mix up the type of reads that I'm going into. So let me know if you've read any of these series down below in the comments. Let me know if you're working on any as well. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at The Bright Side Girl. And I will see you guys next time on The Bright Side.